Good morning. I look forward to meet with NATO defense ministers and ministers from partner countries at the Ukraine contact group led by the United States, and we will discuss how to sustain and step up our support for Ukraine. I just came back from Kyiv yesterday night, and I met with President Zelenskyy, and his message was that he really appreciates and welcomes the strong support the NATO allies and partners have provided for Ukraine, but he also counts on us to continue to support Ukraine in the future. My message to him was that NATO has stood by Ukraine for a long time. We continue to stand by Ukraine as they continue to repel the Russian aggression against their country, and we will stand by Ukraine in the future to help to build a better and brighter future for the Ukrainian people. President Zelenskyy and I also discussed the preparations for the upcoming NATO summit in Vilnius in July. I have invited him to attend the meeting, and I'm glad that he has accepted the invitation and will attend the NATO summit in Vilnius. We discussed the preparations, and I highlighted that there are at least two issues that will be important for Ukraine. One is that I expect NATO allies at the summit to recommit to support Ukraine for as long as it takes, with substantial military support to ensure that Ukraine prevails as a sovereign independent nation in Europe. And I also expect the NATO allies to agree a multi-year program to help Ukraine transition from Soviet-era equipment standards, doctrines to NATO standards and doctrines, and to ensure full interoperability between Ukrainian forces and NATO forces. So I'm looking for the meeting now, and I'm ready to answer your questions.
Does it mean that Ukraine gets a roadmap of accession? Because a lot of Ukrainian officials, they said that one condition of participants of Zelenskyy is roadmap.
I said in Kyiv yesterday that Ukraine's future is in the Euro-Atlantic family, and all NATO allies have agreed that Ukraine will become a NATO member. But the main focus now is, of course, on how to ensure that Ukraine prevails. What we do know is that our support helps Ukraine move toward the Euro-Atlantic integration, and our support help them to make this possible. But the main focus now is on ensuring that President Putin does not win the war, that Ukraine prevails, because without a sovereign, independent Ukraine, there is no meaning in discussing membership.
What weapons did he say he needed most?
What
weapons did he say he needed most?
Well, he went to different types of weapons, including everything from air defense, heavy armor, jets. I'll leave it to Minister Resnikov and the Ukrainians here to describe exactly what kind of needs they have. But that's the reason why it is important to meet here in Ramstein, to sit down with Ukrainians and to discuss in detail what are the needs, what are the gaps, and how can NATO allies and partners in the US-led contact group ensure that we are providing them the support they need as soon as possible. Then, in my discussions with President Zelenskyy, I, of course, recognize the importance of discussing new capabilities, and the support for Ukraine has evolved as the war has evolved. In the beginning, the focus was on light anti-tank weapons like the javelins and the NLAWs. Then the focus was on artillery. Then for a long time, the main focus was on air defense, modern air defense systems like Patriots and NASAMS. And I welcome the fact that now there are Patriots in place, German and US Patriots in place in Ukraine. And over the last weeks, we have a lot of focus on months of focus on armor, on battle tanks, and battle tanks are now coming into to Ukraine. And we need to continue to discuss, and jets are also being delivered by allies to Ukraine. We need to continue to discuss specific platforms. But as important as discussing new platforms, it is extremely important to ensure that all the platforms which are already in Ukraine work and function as they should, meaning that we need ammunition, we need spare parts, we need fuel, we need maintenance, we need repair, we need all the sustainment to ensure that all the systems which are already there are delivering the effect that they should. So therefore, not only discuss new systems, but also discuss how to ensure that existing systems function.
Does NATO have a timetable when Ukraine could enter NATO?
So all NATO allies have agreed that Ukraine will become a member. President Zelenskyy has a very clear expectation. We discussed this, both the issue of membership but also security guarantees. And of course, Ukraine needs security. Because no one can tell when and how this war ends. But what we do know is that when the war ends, we need to ensure that history doesn't repeat itself, that Russia is not able to continue to attack and to wage war again against Ukraine and to continue to chip away at European security. So we need a discussion about a security framework. We need and there will be a discussion about, there is an ongoing discussion about membership. But my message was, first, Ukraine's rightful place is in NATO, as allies have agreed. But also that the main focus now is to ensure that Ukraine prevails. Because if Ukraine doesn't prevail as a sovereign independent nation in Europe, there is no meaning in discussing membership, and we need to preserve the unity in supporting Ukraine, and that's the main focus also of the meeting today.
You speak about
Okay,
long-term military aids. It means that the military counteroffensive won't be enough, and that we have to get prepared to maybe many years of war.
Also, wars are by nature unpredictable, so no one can tell today when this war ends. Hopefully, the Ukrainians are able to make a lot of progress, and you can have a just and enduring peace soon. But no one can say that with certainty. So we need to be prepared for the long haul, and that's the reason why NATO allies have stated again and again that we will stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes. But the other reason why we need a kind of long-term perspective is that even, or also after the war ends, we need to support Ukraine. Because we need to ensure that Ukraine has the military strength, the capabilities, the deterrence to prevent new attacks. Because you have to remember that the war didn't start in February last year. The war started in 2014 when Russia illegally annexed Crimea, and when Russia for the first time moved into eastern Donbass. And then we had a full-scale invasion in February. So when the war ends, we need to ensure that it really ends and that it's enduring peace. And to ensure that, we also need a long-term engagement, relationship with Ukraine. And that's the reason why we also look at a more multi-year program package from NATO to help to ensure full interoperability with Ukrainian forces. Okay, yeah.
Wondering about, they say that today there's a meeting for the tanks groups or something like this today. And all the information that we got, that the tanks is 14, 7, something like this. Is that enough for Ukraine to win in this war? And the other question is, do you think Ukraine can win in this war alone? I mean, just weapons, it's mean.
Yes, I absolutely believe that, and not least because we have seen the courage, the skills, the determination of the Ukrainian armed forces. President Putin made several big mistakes, strategic mistakes, when he invaded Ukraine. The first was to totally underestimate the strength of the Ukrainian armed forces. He thought that he was going to control Ukraine within weeks and take Kyiv within days. Then he totally underestimated NATO allies and our partners in our resolve to support Ukraine. And therefore, he has now been in Ukraine for more than a year, and he does in no way control the country as he planned. And Ukrainians have been able to push back the Russian forces around Kyiv. I was in Bucha yesterday, and of course that was a city that was controlled by Russian forces in the beginning of the war, liberated by the Ukrainian armed forces after a month. The Ukrainian forces pushed back the Russian forces in the east around Kharkiv, and then in the south around Kherson, and we are now helping them to liberate more land by providing more advanced systems. On the battle tanks, well, first of all, I think you need to understand that we speak about many types of battle tanks, but also older ones. But now allies are delivering a significant number of advanced, modern NATO standard battle tanks, like the Leopard 2, like the Challenger from the United Kingdom, the Abrams. But in addition to the advanced, modern NATO standard battle tanks, allies are also delivering infantry fighting vehicles, armed personnel carriers, a lot of armor and ammunition and equipment to these. So all of this is really advanced high-end capabilities that can enable the Ukrainians to push to the Russian lines.
Time for one
Okay.
more. One more.
Sorry.
Last one.
Could you please elaborate a little bit more? What are your exact expectations for the outcome of today's meeting, also in terms of jets?
So first of all, I would like to commend the United States for leading and convening this group, the Defense Contact Group for Ukraine, and also for Germany to hosting it, and to Minister Peterius. I expect that at this meeting, NATO allies partners will announce additional support. And again, not only new platforms, but also to sustain the existing platforms. Just to have the battle tanks, you need an enormous amount of ammunition, fuel, trailers to be able to move heavy equipment like battle tanks, recovery vehicles. So I think sometimes we underestimate all the logistics that have to be in place just to have operational battle tanks capabilities. So maybe it sounds a bit more boring, but the logistics is extremely important. This is now a battle of attrition, and a battle of attrition becomes a war of logistics. So therefore I welcome all the announcements. I expect that will come later today. We have already had some announcements. Netherlands and Denmark have announced that they will deliver 14 more Leopard battle tanks. The US announced more missiles, ammunition for HIMARS, more than 300 million extra US dollars announced yesterday, and all other allies and partners are announcing more. On jets, well, allies have delivered. Poland, Slovakia has delivered MiG-29s. There's an ongoing discussion about also other types of jets. I will leave that to the meeting here, and also the ongoing discussion among allies and partners. We need to constantly assess, constantly consult, but again, not only about new platforms, but also sustaining all the platforms you have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.